All right, today we have Alex O'Connor and Joe Foley together in the same room on Chris Williamson's pod. It's great to have them here exploring some philosophical talks. I watch them both quite religiously, although I'm sure they're probably not the biggest fan of that terminology. But nonetheless, we have a really, really cool segment here on emotivism. And if you're not familiar, Alex is quite the proponent of emotivism. It's his ethical framework by which he lives by or talks about. I believe he's also said that he doesn't die on the hill of emotivism, but I'll let him explore it over here for you guys and we can dig right in.
The thing that I'm very interested in, which is one of your pet theories, is emotivism.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain emotivism to me like I'm 12?
So emotivism is a kind of a theory about ethics and a theory about language. We've been talking so far about sort of what stuff is made out of. And there's lots more to be said about that, by the way, like why everything is made out of consciousness and how we even get there. That's like a kind of metaphysical question. In the realm of ethics, like what's good, what's bad, what should you do, what shouldn't you do, everyone's familiar with that kind of language. If I say like, it's bad for you to kick a homeless person on the street, you kind of understand what I'm saying, you get what I mean. But a philosopher will hear that statement and try to break it down. What literally do we mean? What does this word like bad mean?
Mm-hmm.
The ethical emotivist is someone who thinks that ethical statements are just expressions of emotion. It means that when you say something is good or bad, or that you should or shouldn't do something, all of that moral language is a kind of emotional expression. A big confusion about this is that suppose I just don't like murder. I just don't like it, right? Ethical subjectivism says that when I say murder is wrong, I mean to say something like, I don't like murder.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That is a reporting of my mental state, that I don't like it. Ethical emotivism is not a reporting of your emotional state. It is the expression of the emotion itself.
Mm-hmm. All right, I just want to pause there very, very quickly, just because I think it's important to categorize this and capture this in another way as well. So essentially what Alex is saying, which he did explain very, very clearly, is I think another way to put it is essentially that we use the same terminology towards objective morality as we do to subjective morality. Did I say morality? Morality, of course, that we use the same terminology. That's why he said there's a language component to it. So for example, we're using the terms good and bad to refer to something that we think is reflecting our own emotion, like, oh, we don't like something, so therefore that is bad. But then also in an objective way, we would also claim something is bad. So it then warrants us to further look into what the nature of something being good or bad is. Is it just something that is more of a personal preference, an emotional preference that we have, a relationship that we have to an experience or a phenomena? Or is it actually retained and preserved in this objective morality that there is something naturally good or bad out there that exists that we must either adhere to or stray away from? And that's why I think he used the example of like kicking a homeless person. Like, of course, all of us know that it's bad to kick a homeless person, but what is it that we're actually asking of ourselves or saying when we say that? Is it more on the emotional framework side or is it more on the rational framework side? But I'll let him dig into it a little bit more because there is more to explore there.
It's the difference between saying, I don't like murder, and going like, ugh, murder. Like literally expressing it. Because when I say I don't like murder, that's a claim that you can investigate. Is that true? Is it true that I don't like murder? Maybe I'm lying to you. Maybe it's false, right? So it's sort of, it can be true, it can be false. It's a fact about my psychology. Whereas the expression of distaste for murder, just going, as it famously has been, boo murder, is not the kind of thing that can be true or false. You can't really like debate it exactly. It's just an expression. And the emotivist thinks that that's what's going on with ethics. So A.J. Ayer is kind of the father of this emotivist theory in the 20th century. And it's only one part of his philosophy, but it's probably what he's most remembered for. And so he compares saying, like, the difference between saying murder and saying murder is wrong is a bit like the difference between saying murder and then saying murder with an angry emoji and 3 exclamation marks. It's just this like emphasis on something. So, okay, why think this, right? Like, why would you believe this? Well, pay attention to what your brain is doing when it moralizes. If I walk down the street and I kick a homeless person, you will notice a fact about the world, which is that I have just kicked a homeless person. And you could be completely like morally, emotionally detached from that. You could just report as a fact, if you were like a robot, it's a true fact, Alex just kicked a homeless person, right?
All right, to dig in a little bit over here too. First of all, isn't Joe Foley just very giddy? You can tell he's so excited to be there, and I absolutely love it. I'm so here for it. Anyways, With Alex here, so to further elucidate what he's saying, what is being said here when he's making a claim in quotation, so to speak, of what is good or bad from an emotivist perspective, is it's very important to distinguish the difference between the truth claim of the morality itself and then the truth claim of his psychology, as he mentioned. So when he's saying it's bad that you kick a homeless person, what he's saying from an emotivist perspective isn't that there's a truth claim of it actually being bad in a grand scheme of things in an objective and universal way. It's more so that there's a truth claim on what he's feeling about the situation. So do you see how those are different? That there's a truth claim about his psychology or his emotion or his relationship to the phenomena, which is, ooh, I don't like this. This is bad, again, in quotes, but it's not making a truth claim that this is objectively bad, as in there's some divine providence that had been bestowed on humanity to make sure that that was a bad and disoriented action. Does that make more sense as well? And that's kind of the landscape by which he's navigating himself and the world.
But if you think that it's wrong,
see?
There's something more going on.
Yes.
You think Alex just kicked a homeless person and what's the extra thing? What is that extra thing that makes you say that it's wrong? Well, I think that if you pay attention to what your brain is doing in those instances, it's something that belongs in the category of emotion rather than that kind of rational thought. Like that extra bit that's making you say it's wrong versus just reporting it. Is that extra bit more like, when you burn your hand and take it away, or when you get angry at someone for doing something? Or
okay, now let's start to disagree. As much as I love Alex, this is something I'd really like to prod his brain about regarding morality, because anytime that we're making these claims, again, yes, we're using the same terminology, the same language regarding good and bad, whether it's subjective or objective. The question that I have for the emotivist in this case is, okay, what is that bad that you are claiming, even if it is subjective, in reference to? Because you're saying boo murder. He's saying it's the expression of the emotion itself. It's not the actual truth claim about the morality. It's just the expression of boo, I don't like this, essentially. It's the expression. It's not making a claim on it. But I don't think that they're mutually exclusive, this emotion and the rational element to things. I don't think we can completely toss away the rational or even the abstract element to the morality, because I do firmly believe that boo or even that yay, when it's referring to something that's good, you're doing something good, like you're helping someone, even opening a door for someone on a minuscule level, that they're still doing that in reference to an objective morality, whether they realize that or not. Because if you're saying boo to something, that you don't like something, as he did mention very precisely, that there's something more going on. And he's saying that he thinks it just lends itself more to the emotional side of things. While I do agree, I think there's a greater level of analysis that needs to be explored here. And that level of analysis, I think, exists somewhere beyond just this, how am I feeling in the moment? It's why am I feeling that way about this action? Well, because you inherently know that it affects the wellness of that person. You think it might cause them pain or suffering. And then if you think it causes them pain or suffering, well, why is that then bad? As Alex says before, you have to keep pushing the question back in many cases where you want to really see if something, well, he uses actually that reference with regards to free will, right? I don't want to dig too much into it. He has a lot of content and conversations there, but he says that you have to see who's causing the action. If you're looking at causality of any kind, cause and effect, and then you see, okay, this is caused from my hand moving. Okay, then you push the question back. Then who's moving the hand? Okay, then what is it that's happening in my brain? What neurons are firing? You just keep pushing things back, and therefore essentially realize in many cases, and I put that in quotations because I don't firmly subscribe to that deterministic way of looking things. I do think that there is more of an abstract free will element. We can further explore in another video. Anyways, all of that to say that I do think that there's a greater level of analysis at play for the emotivist, that they terminate at the level of, oh, this is just my emotional feeling. But why is that the emotional feeling? I think that that is so important and necessary to push back because, like I said, it is in reference to something more abstract, more greater, another level of analysis outside of the bounds of, oh, I didn't really like that this person kicked that homeless person, or that I kicked that homeless person, or whatever the case might be. So why don't you like it? Okay, it may cause them suffering. Why is suffering bad? Oh, it affects their ability to live a more fulfilling life. Okay, why is that bad? Well, because I value, this is where we start getting to values, which are very, very abstract, which is what I would prod Alex about. Okay, because you value, let's say, the sanctity of life. Let's say that that is your most abstract claim. Okay, so you value the sanctity of life. Now, I'm not going to contaminate this with religious presuppositions whatsoever and say, oh, then that must mean that everything that's injected into this value of sanctity of life that one may have has to come from a divine providence. I'm not making that claim per se, but I am saying that there's something that exists outside of the self, i.e., objective morality, that does play in the realm even of emotivism, while one thinks that it's coming from their own emotions, that their truth claims about themselves and their morality are coming from just their emotions. I would say that there's an extended element that is, I don't want to say neglected, but I do want to say that it's being pushed to the side. It's in the periphery. And I'm very curious about Alex's thoughts on this, even Joe's, for example. But again, this is where my pushback comes, and where I think that a lot of emotivists, from at least what I've gathered from it so far, starts to fall short, is that they do make this claim, and they do say that it's an emotional claim rather than a rational claim. However, I do think that the emotional and rational are actually inextricably tied here, because they're oriented in the same direction about what they value. I think what's important to point out instead is that there is a critical skepticism, which is so phenomenal, especially on Alex's behalf here, where he's being skeptical of truth claims that exist outside of himself. And I think he's using this emotivist moral realm to manifest that behavior, to manifest that thought process that in a lot of times in our own psychology, in our own thought processes, on our own day-to-day life, just think of anything that you do. You really try to rationalize how you feel, for better or for worse too. It happens every day. It's almost inescapable. It's kind of humorous for that matter. And I do really admire and applaud Alex's ability to be like, well, wait, emotion, morality, language between good and bad, right and wrong. This is where we tend to do that in a very visceral way, that I start to view something, I get immediate emotion out of it, and then I start to rationalize it. So let's separate those. And I do admire that, because there's so many times where you need to separate the way that you think from how you feel. I just don't think that it needs to be terminated, especially in the realm of morality, at simply the emotion itself, because I think it's actually much more telling about what our greater and grander values are in the landscape of an objective morality. That there's something there that we almost inherently know, that there's an a priori, as Kant may mention, framework, whereby we have an understanding, not just of our own language and how to describe the world, but also our own morality, that wellness is a fundamental pillar that we subscribe to as humans, as humanity, as the way that we interact with ourselves and how we see the world and interact with others. That even if we have like a boo murder, it's not just because it's an emotion that's being expressed, but also, and more importantly, because it represents, it's symbolic. It is a expansion, it is a extension, if you may, of this grander theme that unifies all of us within this objective morality of, well, doing something that affects our well-being is bad. The tricky thing here, which I will grant maybe the emotivists or the even moral relativists, is that it's very tricky to pinpoint what is always going to be the good or bad in situation, because I believe that morality actually operates at the conjunction between the right and wrong. What I mean by that is that morality exists because of the contradictions of right and wrong, not because we as humans see things in such a binary and polar opposite way where, oh, this over here is good, this over here is bad. It's actually at the conjunction point. It's at that intersection of good and bad whereby morality is espoused, whereby I think we even have a term for morality, because we see that there could be good things in the bad and bad things in the good. For example, great example is a trolley problem. Alex has also talked about this incredibly often. Very funny. He's had some great takes on it, explored different types of trolley problems. There's even some websites for yourself if you'd like to explore the trolley problem and to see what you would do and really prod your imagination on what you think you would do in certain situations. But if you're not familiar, essentially all it is you have, let's say there's a trolley that's coming, a train that's coming down a track, and it splits among two different tracks, and you have a lever. If you don't pull the lever, there are 5 people tied, and it will automatically run over and kill those 5 people, or if you pull the lever, you divert it into the other track where it kills 1. So then the question is, would you pull the lever? And people will make the claim, well, if you don't pull the lever, then you're not really involved. However, you're letting 5 people die, but you didn't actually make an active choice in killing them. But then if you do pull the lever, only 1 person dies. However, it was on your own discernment, like you were an active agent in the process. So that's where the contradictions or the dilemmas come in, and that's where I believe that morality is very pertinent. And I think that that's something that's very, very worth willing to explore here. I want to see his final thoughts on this. I believe he does have some more, but I do think that this is something that's necessary. That is my pushback on the emotivist framework, at least.
More like 2 + 2 is 4 and the sky is blue. Like, which of those is it more like? I think it much more strongly belongs in the category of emotion. And so that the actual isolated moral element of the statement, it's wrong to kick a homeless person, is an ethical expression.
Okay.
An emotional expression.
Okay, so that was that there. It ties into what I was saying, is that, yes, he's of course leaning into more the emotional element of morality rather than the rational element. Again, my pushback on that specific point is that those are actually more inextricably tied than we think, although I do highly commend his ability to separate those, because, again, I will reiterate that it is very important in your everyday life to try to separate how you think from how you feel, so that you're not just rationalizing immediate emotion, but also forecasting and iterating your judgment and your choices for the future as well. Not just reacting based on how you're feeling or if you're upset in the moment, but actually making coherent and cogent decisions for yourself now and in the future, and for the people around you, of course. That's, again, a moral element, because there's a wellness at play. And I think wellness is a very simple way to categorize why we view morality in such a light, and if that good or bad is in reference to ourselves or the world or something even greater, that is for you to decide, for you to fill in. Very interestingly, this even makes me think of like Pascal's wager for some reason. And Pascal's wager is essentially that it's more rational to believe in God than not to believe in God. He kind of does like a cost-benefit analysis of if you should believe in God or not. And he makes the claim that it's more rational to believe in God because of the benefits outweighing the costs, which is, if there is a God, oh my gosh, you will prevail, that you will go to heaven, that you will find peace, you will be, what's the term I'm looking for? You'll have salvation, let's say. And on the contrary, it's better than going to hell, of course. And what's interesting about that is it seems like a very simple thought, but it actually opposes many of our impressions, many of our intuitions about the world, because a lot of times we have a negativity bias. Even just back to our own evolutionary psychology, we have a negativity bias towards things that can affect us. So a lot of times, if you ask the question, which was really cool, by the way, I really recommend that you watch this entire episode. However, they talk about, would you take 5 minutes of the absolute worst, blistering, unfathomable pain for 5 minutes of the most bliss, love, and expansion, and just absolute pleasure? And if, again, pleasure is a very tricky term, because there's a hedonistic pleasure, but then there's like a fulfilling, purpose-oriented pleasure as well, which can be very, very, very different and very differently acted out. Anyways, all this to say that a lot of people would choose to avoid pain first rather than just tend to pleasure, and that's what a lot of our psychology does revolve around too. So Pascal's wager is kind of goes against this intuition, because he's saying that, well, I would rather the chance that I do go to hell if I believe in God for the chance to also go to heaven, but you'd think that you might escape that. And the reason why this came to mind, I think, with reference to morality, is because it distinguishes the polar opposites between that of the greatest good and that of the worst bad. And it's very interesting to see, if there is an objective morality, do you think that it comes from some sort of divine providence? And is it better to believe that there is an objective morality that comes from a God, let's say, so that you can always make sure that there's a possibility that you orient yourself to that of the greatest good? Or can you do that? The question is, can you do that in a secular way? Can you do that without the religious presuppositions, without a God? And that's another very interesting debate that becomes interesting, controversial, worthwhile to have. There's also separations between, is it important to just understand or adhere to a morality whereby there is a God involved, because it unifies our consciousness, it unifies our ability to make coherent decisions together in the face of a North Star, if you could say. That North Star could be a God. But then you start defining God. Then you start, what does it mean to be God? Is there an anthropomorphic God that exists in the world? Or is there more of an abstract God, a philosopher's God that just sits on top of our value system and our virtues? So much cool things, so much to explore here. If you want more, and if you want me instead also to check out Joe Foley's conversation or some of his segments here on Chris Williamson's pod, please let me know. I want to tackle this particular issue and give a little bit of pushback on the emotivist framework. Anyways, remember to be human. Please subscribe, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.